My girlfriend said, "Your brother assaulted me last night." I said, "That's horrible." Then I showed her my brother had been in hospital for 3 weeks. Her story fell apart quickly. And then, welcome to seductive dreams. It would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel and like the video. Now, without further ado, let's go. I, 32, male, used to think of love as a fortress. With Sarah, 29, I thought we had built one brick by brick over 3 years, a safe place of trust and mutual respect. I was wrong. She wasn't my partner in building a fortress. She was a saboteur, patiently waiting to dynamite the foundations and blame the rubble on someone else. And the person she chose to blame was my brother. Daniel, the last month, had been Hell Daniel. My younger brother by 3 years, and my best friend by a lifetime, had been in a horrific car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light, T-boning his car and shattering his legs. He'd been in the ICU for a week and was now in a long-term recovery ward at St. Mary's Hospital, facing a grueling series of surgeries and months of physical therapy. My life had become a triangle of work, home, and the sterile, antiseptic-smelling corridors of the hospital. Sarah had seemed supportive at first. She'd made lasagna for my parents, offered sympathetic platitudes, and rubbed my back when I'd come home, exhausted and emotionally drained. But lately, a subtle chill had entered our apartment. Her sympathy felt performative, her sighs of frustration more frequent. "I just miss you, Leo," she'd say. "It feels like this family emergency has taken over our entire life. I foolishly thought it was just the strain of the situation getting to her. Last night it all came to a head. I came home late from the hospital. Daniel had had a rough day, and I'd stayed with him until he finally fell asleep. I found Sarah sitting in the dark, a single lamp illuminating the tear tracks on her face. Her body was coiled tight, radiating a trauma that felt chillingly real. My heart sank. "Sarah, what's wrong? What happened?" I asked, rushing to her side. She flinched when I tried to touch her, pulling away as if burned. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was a ragged, broken whisper. It was Daniel. I froze. "Daniel? What about Daniel?" "He came here," she sobbed, wrapping her arms around herself. "Last night, while you were at the hospital, my mind went blank. The words made no sense. Like trying to assemble a sentence from random letters. What are you talking about, Sarah? That's impossible. Don't you dare tell me it's impossible," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "He let himself in with the spare key he knows we keep under the planter. He was angry, Leo. He said I was a distraction, that I was keeping you from your family when you were needed. He said I was selfish." She was getting hysterical now, the details of her story tumbling out in a torrent of pain and accusation. I told him to leave, and he wouldn't. He grabbed me. He pushed me against the wall. She choked on a sob, burying her face in her hands. He assaulted me, Leo. Your brother assaulted me." The room tilted. The accusation was so monstrous, so fundamentally alien to the brother, I knew that my brain struggled to process it. Daniel, the gentle soul who'd once cried because he'd accidentally stepped on a butterfly accused of such a violation. But looking at Sarah, at her convincing terror, her shaking hands, her raw despair, a part of me felt the ground give way. This is what a monster counts on, the performance, the doubt. But my brain, the logical process-driven part of me that I rely on for my work, was already running a diagnostic. It flagged an error, a catastrophic system-level impossibility. Instead of screaming, instead of challenging, I felt that familiar cold clarity descend. The same feeling I'd had when I first saw the wreckage of Daniel's car. Emotion is a storm, but logic is a lighthouse. I needed to be the lighthouse. I knelt in front of her, my voice gentle, masking the ice forming in my veins. "That's horrible," I said, the words tasting like ash. "Sarah, I am so sorry. Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" I'm sore," she whispered. My wrist, he grabbed it so hard. "Okay," I said, my voice a mask of calm concern. "Okay, we're going to deal with this. First thing we do is go to the police. We need to file a report right now." I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. "Panic now. I don't know if I can. I'm so scared, Leo. I just want you to hold me." "I will," I said, standing up. "But this is too serious to wait. An assault is a crime. We report it. That's the first step. But before we go, there's someone else we have to tell. We have to call my parents." "Your parents?" she asked, her voice suddenly small. "Why?" "Because if my brother did what you said he did, they need to hear it from us. They need to know who their son really is." I pulled out my phone. This was the moment, the point of no return. I was giving her one last chance to abandon this insane, destructive lie. She didn't take it. She just nodded mutely, a cornered animal believing it had one last trick to play. My parents thankfully answered on the first ring. I put the phone on speaker. "Mom, Dad," I said, my voice heavy. "I have Sarah here with me. Something terrible has happened, and you need to hear it from her." My mother's worried voice filled the room.
Sarah, dear, are you all right?
With a choked sob, Sarah launched into her story again. It was even more detailed this time, more polished. She described Daniel's clothes, the smell of alcohol on his breath, the exact words of contempt he'd spat at her. She was a masterful storyteller. I listened, my heart turning to stone. I was witnessing the premeditated murder of my brother's character, and she was wielding the knife with practiced skill. When she finished, there was a stunned, horrified silence from the phone. My mother was audibly weeping. My father, a man of few words, just kept repeating, "No, not our Danny. No, I'm so sorry, Mom and Dad," I said, letting the gravity of the moment settle over the room. I know this is hard to believe. It's monstrous, unforgivable. I paused, then turned my gaze directly to Sarah, who was watching me with a look of tragic, vindicated expectation. And it would be, I continued, my voice losing its gentle edge if any of it were true. Sarah's face went slack. What? What are you talking about, Leo? There's just one single massive problem with your story, Sarah, I said, my voice now hard as steel. My brother Daniel has been in state at Mary's hospital for the past 22 days. He hasn't left his room, let alone his bed, for 3 weeks. I held up my own phone, which I'd been readying while she spoke. This is a photo I took of him an hour ago, asleep in his hospital bed after the nurse gave him his pain medication. You see that cast on his right leg? That's holding a shattered tibia and fibula together with pins. You see the traction on his left leg? That's for his fractured femur. He has had 2 major surgeries. He physically cannot stand or put any weight on his feet. He can't even get to the bathroom on his own, Sarah, let alone drive across town, break into our apartment, and assault you. I continued, the evidence I had at my fingertips pouring out. I have his medical charts. I have the hospital's electronic visitation logs, which show me and my parents as the only visitors. I have the sworn testimony of the entire night nursing staff who monitor him hourly. So, I'll ask you again, Sarah, who assaulted you last night? The color drained from her face. She stared at my phone at the undeniable proof of her lie, and her carefully constructed world shattered. The performance collapsed into a mess of sputtering denial. No, you're lying, she stammered. You're covering for him. It was him. Maybe. Maybe he snuck out. Snuck out, I asked with a humorless laugh. A man who can't walk. Are you hearing yourself? My father's voice boomed from the speakerphone. No longer sad, but filled with a righteous, terrifying rage. You vile, evil girl. You would lie about this about our son while he's lying helpless in a hospital bed. Sarah finally broke. But it wasn't the break of remorse. It was the break of a captured animal. She looked at me, her eyes filled not with guilt but with pure, undiluted hatred. You were choosing him over me, she screamed. You spent all your time there. You forgot about me. I just wanted you to see. I wanted you to choose me. The confession, twisted and narcissistic as it was, hung in the air. She hadn't done this for money or any other tangible gain. She had done this out of pure pathological jealousy. She was willing to destroy an innocent, injured man's life just to make herself the center of my attention. I felt nothing but a cold, empty void where my love for her used to be. It's over, Sarah, I said, my voice flat. Pack a bag. I want you out of my apartment and out of my life now. She stared at me, realizing she had lost everything. Her story hadn't just fallen apart. It had exploded, and she was standing alone at the epicenter of the blast. Update 1. The hours after her confession were a blur of cold, methodical action. She packed a bag, alternating between venomous hisses about how I was the cruel one and pathetic sobs for a second chance. I ignored it all, standing by the door like a sentinel until she was gone. The moment the door clicked shut, I deadbolted it and called a 24-hour locksmith. But my family and I knew this couldn't be the end. A lie this monstrous, this potentially life-ruining, couldn't just be swept under the rug. My father, livid and protective, insisted we go on the offensive. The next morning, my parents and I sat down with a lawyer. We laid out the entire story supported by my evidence, the time-stamped photo of Daniel, my call logs from the hospital, and a written statement from Daniel's primary care nurse about his condition and immobility. The lawyer was blunt. Sarah hadn't just told a lie. She had made a specific criminal accusation. What she had done was defamation. And if she took it any further, it would be filing a false police report, a serious crime. He advised us to send her a formal cease and desist letter, warning her against repeating the accusation to anyone and to be prepared for her to escalate. He was right. Sarah didn't just crawl away in shame. She doubled down. She couldn't maintain the lie that it was Daniel, so she mutated it. She began texting our mutual friends, spinning a new insidious narrative. Sarah's text to a friend. OMG, you won't believe what happened. Leo threw me out. I told him his brother assaulted me and he and his family are trying to cover it up using some fake hospital alibi. I'm so terrified. I don't know who the guy was, but he looked just like Daniel. And Leo is protecting him. She was trying to salvage her victim status, painting me as a monster, siding with an attacker against her. The smear campaign had begun. My phone started buzzing with texts from confused friends. "Dude, what is going on with Sarah? Heard you kicked her out. Is she okay?" I spent a whole day responding with a calm, concise version of the truth. Sarah made a false and malicious accusation of assault against my brother, who has been hospitalized and unable to walk for 3 weeks. The relationship is over. I'd appreciate you respecting my privacy on this. Some friends were immediately supportive. Others were hesitant, trapped by the insidious "believe the woman" mantra, which Sarah was now weaponizing with surgical precision. I lost a few of them. People who couldn't reconcile the Sarah they knew with the monster she had revealed herself to be. It hurt, but it was a necessary cauterization of the wound she had left in my life. Then came the call I was dreading: her parents. I expected them to be apologetic, horrified by their daughter's actions. I was naive. Her mother called, and her voice was pure venom. "I don't know what you did to my daughter," she began without any preamble, "but to have her this distraught is unforgivable. She is a wreck. You and your family, with all your money and your fancy lawyers ganging up on her. She told us you're covering up for whoever attacked her." I was dumbfounded. "Are you serious?" I asked. "Your daughter admitted she lied. She confessed that she made up the entire story about my injured brother because she was jealous. She needs serious psychological help, not enablers." "She was under duress," her father yelled, grabbing the phone. "You coerced her. Monk'll see you in court." They hung up. It was then I knew this was going to get much, much worse. They weren't just defending her, they were funding the next wave of her attack. Update 2. A week later, I was served with papers. Sarah, backed by her parents, had not only filed a police report, but had also filed for a temporary restraining order against me, claiming I had threatened her and she was in fear for her life. The police report cleverly omitted Daniel's name, now describing an unidentified assailant who bore a striking resemblance to Daniel Thorne, and alleging that I was obstructing justice by refusing to help her identify him from Daniel's circle of friends. It was a master stroke of malicious fiction. She was trying to legally compel me into participating in her fantasy, painting me as a co-conspirator in a cover-up. The restraining order was pure harassment, a tool to disrupt my life and paint me as the aggressor. My lawyer was prepared. We appeared in court for the restraining order hearing. Sarah took the stand, giving an Oscar-worthy performance of a terrified victim. She spoke of my sudden rage, my cold eyes, and how my family's immediate and unified denial made her fear they would do anything to silence her. Then it was my turn. My lawyer didn't just refute her claims. He systematically dismantled her credibility. He presented Daniel's complete ironclad medical alibi. He presented the text messages where she was trying to spread the new mutated version of her story to our friends. He then called a surprise witness, a former friend of Sarah's from college, a woman who had reached out to me after hearing what was happening. On the stand, this woman recounted a story from 6 years prior where Sarah, after being dumped by a boyfriend, had falsely accused him of slashing her tires to get him in trouble with the police. The charge was eventually dropped, but the damage was done. It established a clear and damning pattern of vindictive, manipulative behavior. The judge, a stern woman who had seen it all, looked at Sarah with unconcealed disgust. She didn't just deny the restraining order. She took the extraordinary step of lecturing Sarah from the bench about the gravity of her actions and the damage false accusations do to real victims. The case was dismissed with prejudice. The police investigation into the assault concluded just as quickly. After reviewing Daniel's alibi, they closed the case, but they opened a new one. A criminal investigation into Sarah for filing a false police report. The district attorney's office, armed with the evidence from the restraining order hearing and my full cooperation, decided to press charges. The war Sarah had started had now turned on her completely. Final update. The past year has been a long road, but it's finally over. The wheels of justice turned slowly, but they grind exceedingly fine. The criminal case against Sarah concluded 2 months ago. Faced with the irrefutable evidence and the testimony of her former friend, she had no choice but to take a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to filing a false police report, a misdemeanor that will nonetheless follow her for the rest of her life. She was sentenced to 2 years of probation, a significant fine, mandatory psychological counseling, and 300 hours of community service at a center for actual victims of assault. A sentence of almost poetic justice. My civil suit against her for defamation and malicious prosecution settled out of court. Her parents, finally seeing the bottomless pit of legal and financial trouble their daughter had created, agreed to a settlement that covered all my legal fees and included a substantial sum, which I immediately donated in Daniel's name, to a charity that supports victims of drunk driving accidents. The settlement was contingent on her signing a legally binding non-disclosure agreement, preventing her from ever speaking or writing about me or my family again. Daniel is walking again. The physical scars are fading, but the emotional ones run deeper. The knowledge that someone could target him with such a vile lie while he was at his most vulnerable has changed him, made him more weary. But our family is stronger than ever. The crisis forged us in fire, and the bond we share now is unbreakable. I sometimes reflect on Sarah's motive, that desperate, pathetic need to be the center of my world. In the end, her actions did make her the center of a world, just not the one she wanted. A world of court dates, probation officers, and therapy sessions. A world where her name is now synonymous with deceit. There was no shouting match, no dramatic revenge scheme. My victory was quiet and methodical. It was the calm presentation of facts. It was the steady, unwavering support of my family. It was refusing to be dragged into her emotional chaos. She built a house of cards on a foundation of lies, and I simply presented a single irrefutable gust of wind. The truth, she wanted me to choose her. I did. I chose to believe my brother. I chose to protect my family. And I chose to hold her accountable for the consequences of her own evil, and that is a choice